Hey everyone, how's it going? Matthew Kadish here, author of the Earthman Jack Space Saga, Evil Genius, and of course, the original lover of Miss Pac-Man, coming at you today with a new live stream talking about our video game news. So today is going to be with Grodd's Gamers, and normally we have a lot of different video game aficionados on the live stream to talk about the news of the week. But today we have a special guest who it's just going to be him and me basically. And it is probably the most insightful guy I know, not only about video games, but technology in general. And with me today is James Houston, otherwise known as Luggards, or as I like to call him, Cold Fission or Fusion. He has many names, as is appropriate for a man of many talents such as himself. James, why don't you introduce yourself and let everyone know, what you do?
Everybody, this is Lugs, software engineer, gamer. Been building PCs, including gaming PCs, for the past 32 years. Tracks. I also have a very large dog who's decided that it's time to play with his noisiest toy right now.
Yes, one of the few benefits of having my own office is getting to put the wife and kids and dogs out of it while I'm doing these live streams. But you look like you're in a communal space over there.
Oh yeah, I usually do my stream straight from the living room. This is also my workspace. This is generally where I do everything. Luckily, noise canceling headphones help with a lot of it.
Right on. So we got a lot of video game news to get to today, and a lot of it's PC based, which I like because I'm not a big console gamer, nor am I a big mobile gamer, although I've been getting into mobile games a little bit more lately. But the first thing we're going to talk about is this new announcement from Riot Games that is basically putting them kind of head-to-head with Blizzard in terms of what they're going to be offering consumers coming up. And we got this article right here where basically Riot Games, for those of you who don't know, they're the ones behind the League of Legends MOBA. That's one of the most popular games in the world. And I guess while James takes care of his dog, I'll kind of fill you in. So basically, League of Legends was Riot's biggest game. It gets 8 million concurrent players daily, something like that. It's usually number one on Twitch in terms of what's being streamed. It's a very competitive esports scene. And for the longest time, that was pretty much it in terms of Riot Games. It was just League of Legends. But Riot recently announced that they're developing 7 new games. And a lot of people are looking at this as a declaration of war against Blizzard and Blizzard's dominance in the video game industry. And we have an article here from PC Gamer by Stephen Messner. And basically it says that as Blizzard continues to falter, Riot is out for blood. And of course, this announcement coincides with a lot of troubles that Blizzard's facing, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But James, why don't you give us the rundown on the games that Blizzard has announced, or I'm sorry, that Riot has announced, and how they're going to be affecting Blizzard.
Well, it's not just Blizzard. They're pretty much taking aim at the entire esports community. They want, from what I see, they're trying to take over every single bit of the esports community. You have Blizzard-like games. You have your what is this code name? I'm trying to remember the name of it because it's Codename A, I believe.
Well, League of Legends, obviously Blizzard tried to compete with them with Heroes of the Storm, but they kind of waved the white flag and gave that up. But it looks like Riot is they're doing a first-person shooter. They're doing a card game to compete with Hearthstone. They're doing a fighting game, so something like a Tekken or Street Fighter. A management sim. I'm not quite sure what that is. It sounds something like almost like a Warcraft or StarCraft type thing. Tactical multiplayer mobile versions of their games of League of Legends and Teamfight Tactics. Teamfight Tactics is their latest auto chess kind of entry, which is a growing esport in of itself. So it sounds like they've got quite an offering on their plate.
Oh yeah, and we're not even just talking an FPS. We're talking hero shooter, which
Yeah, like
is a
Overwatch.
more it's a direct competition to Overwatch. Their management seems a bit like an esports version of FIFA Football Manager. Which is EA's, if I remember correctly, their biggest offering in terms of DLC. They made the majority of their money, I think, last year off of it, between FIFA and FIFA Football Manager. And then you have the card game, which was actually already released. I don't wait. I'm not sure if it was only released or if it's only released to streamers, because it's been pretty high up on the list, and that's a direct competitor to Hearthstone.
Yeah, I've seen some videos of it. It doesn't look too good to me, actually. Like it looks very basic. And
It's basic, and it reminiscent of Magic, I think, more than a direct competitor to Hearthstone. But maybe they're going for the people who thought Hearthstone was a little too, um, I guess, newbie friendly or a little too random.
well, you know what's funny is what was it? Steam. What's the company that runs Steam?
Valve.
Valve. Yeah. So Valve released a new card game a while back to try to compete with Hearthstone.
Oh,
That was called Artifact, and that fell flat on its face. Uh,
it became a joke that Artifact streaming was the place to stream porn on Twitch for a long time. Like you could see everything in the Artifact section except a single game of Artifact.
but it was funny because like I actually when the game launched, when Artifact launched, I watched a couple streamers playing it, and it was actually a very interesting game to watch once you learn the mechanics. And I was actually into it for probably the first month of release, and then it just seemed like the community started dying off, and now it's like it's pretty much dead in the water. And I've been looking at this game this card game that Riot released, and I'm not too impressed with what I've seen so far.
No, it's actually Magic might not have been the best. When I look at it, I see a little more of a Yu-Gi-Oh style game.
Yu-Gi-Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because it has the entire attack defense rounds. It seems too slow, in my opinion, to ever become a real esport. And everything's based around that I saw seemed to be based around some sorts of spells and things like that that are based off of conditions to the monster. But it's definitely one of the weirder games that I saw.
Well, one of the interesting things about this article is that they point out that this announcement comes right as the gaming community is pretty much all against Blizzard at the moment, where basically last year at 2018's BlizzCon, they kind of misjudged their audience and pissed everyone off with their focus on mobile gaming and stuff like that. And then, of course, the latest thing is this kerfluffle over Hong Kong, where they banned the Hearthstone champion and the casters who were doing the casting for the championship game and stuff like that because of their pro Hong Kong political announcement. And Blizzard walked it back, but the community backlash has been strong and persistent. But what's interesting is, so like, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I believe there's this Chinese company called Tencent, and they're like the biggest tech company in China, and they own
Possibly the world at this point. Like they own a piece of most of North America's companies as well.
Okay, so from what I understand, they own like a 10% share in Activision Blizzard or something like that.
40% in Epic.
But the interesting thing is that they own 100% of Riot.
Oh yeah.
Riot is owned outright by this same company. So the question is like, why is Blizzard getting so much backlash, whereas Riot isn't? And probably because they haven't really made any big censorship mistakes like Blizzard did. But how do you see this affecting the esports scene? Do you think we're going to see a lot of people kind of migrate from Overwatch and Hearthstone over to Riot Games?
See,
Teamfight Tactics does seem to be making headway
yeah.
out there.
And it came at a good time, and Underlords was a little bit half-baked to start, which is Valve's version of the Auto Chess Battler. I don't see Project A directly competing with Overwatch. I mean, they originally, you can tell they tried to at first, but it's more of a Counter-Strike or, it's more like a Counter-Strike or Rainbow Six Siege type game. Quick time to kills, not much sustained action in comparison. I've been watching a little bit about it, and it's much closer to like a Counter-Strike type of tactical fighter, Rainbow Six.
And an interesting thing that the article pointed out was that all these new games are League of Legends based. They're kind of doing what Blizzard did with their IPs, and basically every game is kind of expanding upon the League of Legends property. So, like the fighting game, I believe you call it Project A. That's going to be with League of Legends characters. The card game is based off of League of Legends. All these things are going to be League of Legends based. Trying to, I guess,
except the hero shooter.
Oh,
The
really?
hero shooter is a near future Earth.
Okay.
So that's why I said it's going to be a more tactical game. You'll probably see things that are not that different from, like I said, like a Counter-Strike or Rainbow Six. A little bit over the top, maybe. I'm thinking possibly Division. It's like a Division 2 like shooter. At the very least, that's from what little is out there on that. But yeah, they even have a cartoon anime coming out too.
Yeah, this thing called Arcane, which is, I think it's another League of Legends thing, but I could be wrong. But I'll go ahead and show the trailer here because it's pretty cool.
I'd like to let you in on a very important secret. Power comes to those who will do anything to achieve it. It's time to let the monster out.
Yeah, so that looks pretty good. I'm not a big fan of League of Legends, so I don't know much about it. I just don't play MOBAs because I suck at them. But the animation style for Arcane looks really cool. It's like a cell shaded CG animation, but it's got some anime elements to it. Looks pretty cool. I'd definitely check that out. And that's a great way to kind of, was it like a commercial for their games, basically, get people into the League of Legends universe through a cartoon like that.
And from a business sense, considering all these games they're putting out are in the same universe, they're going to hit so many different groups of people, depending on, of course, how the games actually hit.
Yeah. Do we know where that cartoon is going to be showing? Is it like a Netflix thing or?
No, I don't think I've actually heard where it's going to be. I would expect that to be on places like VRV. Stream.
I wouldn't be surprised if they ink some type of deal with one of these streaming services to get it on there so people can check it out.
Oh yeah, but then again, I could actually see them trying to release that for free.
True.
I mean, the entire point of that is to get everybody interested in their games. Like what they spend on actually animating that is going to be minuscule compared to what they can make just getting another couple of thousand people to play.
And the big thing here that I think a lot of people kind of overlook is the mobile games that Riot announced. So League of Legends, it's one of the biggest games out there, and the fact that they're finally getting a mobile version is a pretty big deal, wouldn't you say?
Oh yeah, it's not just a mobile version. They're coming out, if I remember correctly, with some console versions as well.
Mm. So they really are trying to compete with Blizzard in that sense.
Oh yeah, and it's from a development perspective, it's actually a smart move as well because they had the time to put these together, and from what I've heard, they rebuilt the graphics engine, and then porting that back to PC would give them a graphics upgrade, while at the same time giving them another avenue to actually sell the game on other consoles.
That's really interesting. And another big thing is the mobile version of Teamfight Tactics. Now, maybe you could explain to me and the audience a little bit what exactly is auto chess and why is it so popular right now?
Auto chess is you take the fast, quick battles from, say, an RTS, real-time strategy game, say your Warcraft or something like that. And a lot of times you don't directly control individual units. You control the general plan of attack and everything like that. But then you put it down, and that is the main thing. You strategize which units to pick, which alliances to pick, different abilities, different equipment items, and things like that. And then you let the computer battle it out against other people. It's completely strategy based, which
so it started off as a mod for Dota. Am I correct in that?
yes.
And
The funny thing is,
it has nothing to do with chess, really.
no.
So the name
Except
auto chess
it's a board. It's
Yeah.
a board. That's about the only. It looks like a chessboard.
Yeah. And basically, you have like I think eight to 10 different players, and basically you can choose units and upgrade these units and basically make these units stronger and create different compositions of units. And then within a certain amount of time, you're matched up with one of these other players, and your team fights against their team, and it's basically just like computer versus computer. You don't have any real control over it. It's all based off of like the unit composition and how strong they are and stuff like that. And then whoever wins progresses or gets a certain amount of points to get to the top of the leaderboard, that type of thing. Is that correct?
You get about, I think all of them start you at 100 health, and depending on the star level, which is how much you've upgraded the unit, you take that much damage, which increases further in the later rounds. So what you're looking at is a resource management sim that also has a bit of strategy elements, and the battling is, I guess, just there to keep score almost.
Yeah, and this genre, the auto chess genre, has become it's just exploded in popularity. So many, I know a lot of card players, like Hearthstone players and stuff like that, have jumped over to it and seem to be streaming it pretty regularly. And there are some channels just dedicated to either the League of Legends version or the Dota version. But the fact that Riot has taken it to mobile could also, really explode that genre even more than it already is. So I find it interesting that they have so many kind of irons in the fire right now, whereas before they were just kind of content with just doing their MOBA.
Oh yeah, and it all happened so quickly. It was nothing but League of Legends, and then out of nowhere, the Teamfight Tactics. I guess they might have been working on it for a while, but Dota Underlords was about to come out, and suddenly out of nowhere, I think it was like a week beforehand, maybe, or around the exact same time, you suddenly had Teamfight Tactics come out of nowhere, and then within a couple of months, you have these 7 games being announced. I'm guessing all of this was supposed to coincide with their anniversary.
Well, that is when they announced it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, that's when they announced it, but I meant like they had been planning. This didn't seem like quick. This seemed like this had been something. Even Teamfight Tactics seems like something they've been working on for a couple of years and wanted to get out at around this time. The funny thing is, there's actually another one out there that most people, the original developer of the mod, actually didn't sell his, but is about to release his on Epic as well.
Yeah, so it's kind of like a race to establish the preeminent version of Teamfight Tact or auto chess.
Yeah, and the thing is, League of Legends is kind of used to that because they have some fairly strong competitors in the MOBA market. You have Dota, then you have the hundreds of them that died over the years.
Yeah, well, it is interesting to see how Riot's going to change the marketplace, simply because, I mean, not all these games are coming out at the same time, even though they announced them at the same time. So there's probably going to be a steady rollout. But in terms of the esports scene, do you think that there's any chance that they're going to start siphoning people away from Blizzard games?
See, that's really hard to take a guess at. I'm leaning towards they're definitely going to cause Blizzard to lose some subscribers. I don't think it's going to be enough to take away Blizzard's dominant position in, say, card games or something like that. But and there's also with all the other stuff going on, they might end up even losing more people. But there's so much competition. My worry is, of course, the fact that Tencent owns a good portion of several of the esports leagues. And if they start exerting pressure there, you might see them actually taking over everything.
Well, they already have their fingers in pretty much everything.
Yeah.
Mighty Wolf says, so an AI plays for you? In a way, so in terms of auto chess, Mighty Wolf, basically you're playing in the sense that you're choosing the units that you put into your group that's fighting. You choose what their upgrades are. You kind of enact the strategy to make your team as formidable as possible. And then once the opponent's team comes in, the computer just auto fights based off of the stats. So you're not micro managing anything like you might in something like StarCraft, for instance. It just kind of auto plays. But the part where the gamer comes into play is in kind of formulating the strategy of how best to make up their team, how quickly to upgrade their team, what type of synergies to include in the team, what type of items. There's a lot of different like upgrade elements to the auto chess game, but the actual like fighting against other people's units, that's out of your hands. And a lot of people like that because it lowers the barrier to entry. So someone like myself who's quite slow on the clicking and the micro, so like I can't do competitive StarCraft, I could do this because it's a little bit slower paced and it doesn't require you to do half the work that something like a StarCraft game might.
Yeah, and like I said, there's also the resource element there. There's even strategies where you purposely lose because you get an advantage sometimes, losing for 6 or 7 rounds in a row. It's not just AI battling for you. Trying to actually work for economy is a valid strategy as well. Coming out with the most gold in the end, your chances of winning are pretty high.
Yeah. Now, speaking of losing, let's talk about Blizzard and this Hong Kong controversy that's been all over the news lately. So if we go check out this article from Forbes, for those of you who maybe aren't aware what's happened, so basically there was this big kerfluffle that happened with Blizzard where their Hearthstone world champion I forget his name. I think it was Blitzchung.
Blitzchung.
Blitzchung. So the world champion of Hearthstone, Blitzchung, made a political statement in his kind of championship interview. So after he won the championship, he was being interviewed on during BlizzCon or right before BlizzCon, and basically he made a pro Hong Kong statement. And what's going on right now is there are a lot of protesters in Hong Kong, which are kind of trying to enact some change in that country, get them away from Chinese rule. And it's kind of a volatile political situation because, as we all know, China is like the censorship capital of the planet. They're basically very strict on what they allow to be communicated out there, especially when it comes to their government. And so Blizzard, in response to Blitzchung's pro Hong Kong announcement, really to a lot of people overreacted. They took away all of his prize money. They took away his championship title, I think. They suspended the 2 casters who were doing the interview at the time. There was just like there was a lot of very over the top punitive measures directed at these guys for this political statement that the guy made. And the backlash from the community has been astounding. James, can you give us kind of like an overview of what happened in response to Blizzard overreacting like this?
So it was an almost immediate. There are thousands of people right now using the GDPR as a weapon in order to force Blizzard to return all of their data.
What's the GDPR?
I can't remember what that stands for. It's a European law. It's pretty much the right to be forgotten and the right for access to all of your information. General Data Protection Regulation.
Okay.
As someone in tech, I'll just go over this for a second. When we get a GDPR request, it's pretty much all hands on deck to get every single piece of information about that person, where it's at, what server it's at. You can even go any further and ask for specifics about which server it's been at for the last 8 months. That means they have to keep trace of every single server your data has been on, physical location.
Okay. So what have people been doing in response to Blizzard?
Oh, to Blizzard, they've been handing off GDPR requests that take a good company probably 2 to 7 days per request.
Okay.
They are planning a protest of BlizzCon. A mass amount of account deletions have been happening where people are requesting Blizzard to completely delete their account. The original one of the original producers of World of Warcraft actually posted a picture of him deleting his account.
A lot of people unsubscribing from World of Warcraft.
Unsubscribing, but when you delete your account, you're actually deleting your World of Warcraft, your Hearthstone, your Call of Duty, your Warcraft 3. You're giving up all your assets. It's for some people who've spent $2 or $3 grand on a Blizzard account, you can't actually recover from that point.
Yeah. So they're not coming back when they delete their account. You know that for a fact.
Yeah. Blizzard has canceled events. They recently canceled the Hearthstone launch for the Switch in New York City. They had plans for interviews. The first couple hundred people would get to talk to all the voice actors for Overwatch. They had rented out the Nintendo store. Not rented out, but they had set up an event through the Nintendo store where they were taking it over pretty much for the day. Mm-hmm. That was canceled 2 days before it happened.
Yeah, so basically there's been a huge backlash, and Blizzard has definitely noticed it. And then Blizzard issued a statement, I'll just go through it here in the article, that this journalist considers to be bizarre. He says it feels like it was crafted by a dozen different PR people and lawyers to say a whole lot of words without really answering the core question that the incident raises. And the nuts and bolts of this is that the penalties Blizzard doled out will be reduced Blitzchung will keep his winnings because even though he broke the tournament code of conduct rules with his statement, that had nothing to do with his gameplay. In addition to that, he hasn't been removed from Grandmaster, which was not said in the statement for some reason, but confirmed later. And both his suspension and the caster's suspension are now 6 months, and they can return to the scene after that period of time if they so choose. And then he says, though, I'm not sure why they would after all this. It does seem like they might want to hop over to Riot Games, after the treatment that Blizzard kind of gave them. But as we said before, Tencent also owns 100% of Riot, so there might not be anywhere for them to go. But how do you think Blizzard handled this situation?
Oh, they handled it beyond belief. This is a PR nightmare in every single way. It didn't help that their official Chinese account, immediately after this happened, said pretty much they're angered and disappointed at what happened at the event, and will always respect and defend the pride of our country. That came from like Blizzard's official account in China. So the second apology looks very, very fake in comparison to the statement that their Chinese arm put out.
Well, it is good that Blitzchung got his winnings back because he did earn that. And I am glad to see that they're, kind of shortening the ban on these guys from lifetime to like 6 months. But still, it seems like if Blizzard had just ignored this, it wouldn't have been a big deal. It would have been like a flash in the pan. But because they overreacted so much, basically they've created their worst PR nightmare. And in fact, in this article, it says gamers are organizing a mass protest at BlizzCon 2019. And this is coming off of the disaster that was BlizzCon 2018, where you had a huge backlash against Blizzard for their focus on mobile games as opposed to the stuff their community actually wanted. So this seems to kind of go hand in hand with them just being tone deaf to the people that they rely on for their income. And a lot of people are kind of attributing this to Activision more so than the old Blizzard, because the old Blizzard really no longer exists. All the people who made it the gold standard of video game companies have kind of since left and gone elsewhere. And so now it's just the brand, and they seem to be running that brand into the ground, so much so that it says here that there are some rights groups that are organizing a protest in support of Blitzchung. And it's going to be a pro-Hong Kong protest, and it's going to be directed at Blizzard at their annual convention. What do you think is going to happen here, James? Do you think that Blizzard is going to pull out of this, or is this something they can't recover from?
They're going to have to decide how they want to actually pull out of this if it's going to happen, because right now, I think they've raised something like $20,000 to hand out free Hong Kong T-shirts at the entrance. Which means they're going to have to decide, okay, are we going to stop everybody coming in with the free Hong Kong T-shirts? The same thing just happened recently with NBA, outside of video games, where people are raising money just to hand them out at the entrance. And what you're going to see is the more they crack down on it, the more people are going to get upset. If it starts to become a regular occurrence, the people who normally wouldn't care because this just happened one time, they apologize for it, are going to probably start to become upset. And I have a feeling it's going to be a little bit of a snowball effect. And you're not seeing that many people actually defend Blizzard here. That's the one thing that tells me whether a protest, like one of these things, is going to happen. Because if you had a ton of people defending them, at the very least, they'd have a core base to go back to. But with how quiet they're being, with how they don't seem to be trying to make amends to the community, the tone deaf, I guess, would be the best term for it. They don't understand why anybody's upset almost. I mean, their own employees are protesting in the parking lot. Not in the parking lot, in front of their statue.
Yeah, it is kind of funny because there is no one defending Blizzard with how they handle this. And but they are kind of in a sticky situation here because I mean, just the fact that they're partially owned by Tencent, one of the largest tech companies in the world, aside, and Tencent is a Chinese company. The Chinese market for video games is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, out there next to the U.S. So if they piss off China and China revokes their games from being sold, in the nation, uh, that's potentially billions of dollars that they're losing right there. Am I right?
It is, but the amount of money actually spent in China is a little bit less than the U.S. That's the thing is, I saw a chart a couple weeks ago of Blizzard's earnings, and I think only something like 15% of their earnings come from China. Well, come from Asia in general. It was, I want to say, 45% with the U.S., maybe 20%, 25% Europe, and then the rest was from Asia. But I'd actually have to find that chart. It was something that I saw like 2 or 3 weeks ago that had a list of where all Blizzard's money comes. So yeah, there's a lot of money coming in from China.
But the interesting thing is a lot of the cheaters, a lot of the hackers and cheaters out there are from China too. So like if you just
piracy as well.
Yeah, so if you just banned China, you probably solve a lot of your problems.
And the thing is, they're going to have to make the decision of what's the most important market for their individual company, at the very least, or what is their company's, I guess, ethics. Because the funny thing is, one of the first things happened was they had a statue out front, and someone taped over the "Every Voice Matters," which was implanted in the stone at the mural, and "Think Globally." Someone taped over both of them. Was one of the first protests. It was one of their employees.
It seems like there's a lot of internal strife over there as well. Like I said before, the Blizzard of today is not the Blizzard that we all know and love. A lot of the people who made that company what it was left. Activision seems to be kind of restructuring things and changing the corporate culture over there, and not for the better, according to a lot of insiders. So it seems like Blizzard's kind of on the decline, and it's going to be interesting to see if they're able to recover from this. Especially, I mean, BlizzCon's just around the corner, right? It's like next month or something.
BlizzCon, November 22nd, I think.
Yeah, so like if they have another bad BlizzCon after
November 1st, it's coming up in like 2 weeks.
Okay, yeah, so it's right around the corner. So if they have another really bad BlizzCon after the 2018 disaster, they're going to be hurting, aren't they?
Yeah, and the thing is, this was supposed to be their best BlizzCon ever. Diablo 4 announcement, Overwatch 2 announcement. They were doing a full remaster of Diablo 2 possibly. While Classic was doing bonkers before this. Like, they were on their way back up into one of the top companies. And between this, the issues they're having with Call of Duty, which I think was also on the list to talk about, it just seems like everything went bad in like a matter of 3 or 4 weeks.
What were the issues with Call of Duty?
I think I sent that on the list, the exclusive mode for only PS4s.
Well, yeah, we did have it on our list of things to talk about, but I think I cut it. So let's just cover it real quick right now.
So their newest Call of Duty, Modern Warfare, is coming out, and they're having an exclusive mode, which it was an important mode for a lot of people. It was the closest thing to a Call of Duty Zombies that Modern Warfare actually had, which has a very vocal community to it. And when they announced it, there was no word on it. People pre-ordered like crazy, and when they were putting out information about the different modes, suddenly that has a year-long exclusivity. With Call of Duty doing refreshes every single year, a year of exclusivity means the game is dead by the time it actually comes out on any other console or PC.
Yeah, so all the PC gamers, all the Xbox gamers, all these people, they don't get this mode basically.
Pretty much. By the time they get it, the game's there's going to be no population left.
Yeah, and this is on top of Activision losing Bungie, and you know the game Destiny, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. So it just seems like everything is turning up bad for Activision Blizzard right now.
Oh, the other thing that just happened today is no, it just happened yesterday was they actually got letters from both sides of the aisle. We don't usually talk about politics too much, but they got letters from both sides of the aisle criticizing their moves and asking what they were going to do to fix it.
Yeah, so Republicans and Democrats sent letters to the company.
Yep, and it wasn't even mild Republicans and Democrats. I believe it was AOC, Alexandra Cortez, and who else?
What were their letters about exactly?
I'm trying to find this one. Oh yeah, it was Wyden, Rubio, Cortez, Gallagher, and Walensky. It was pretty much telling them you need to decide whether you value, you want to promote American values, freedom of speech, or give in to Beijing's demand in order to preserve market access. It's pretty much telling them you need to decide which side you're on. Are you for freedom of speech? Are you looking at the U.S. market, or are you looking at will restrict anything in order to keep access to the Chinese market?
That's interesting because the NBA is going through this exact same type of issue right now. I wonder if they sent letters to them as well.
I believe they did. Yep. AOC and Ted Cruz, actually. So you don't get much
there's a combination.
Yeah. You don't get much further apart than them. If they agree on something, you might want to listen to it.
Yeah, and of course, this is all coming on the heels of the announcement that President Trump reached some type of first stage of negotiation with China over our trade disputes. So China is just everywhere in the news right now, and none of it seems to be very good.
No, but the thing is, it looks like China realized they might have overplayed their hand a little bit. They were stirring up a little bit of the anti-NBA sentiment, and since pretty much every side has started to come down on these companies, I think it was 2 or 3 days ago, you saw them, the police start to get involved with the destruction of property and things like that.
Yeah.
Because it was being kind of whipped up by the party over there. And just 2 or 3 days ago, they started stopping people from doing anything.
Well, hopefully Blizzard recovers from this and they learn their lesson and they continue making quality games that everyone can enjoy. And I hope that the community can recover from it as well. But let's talk about, instead of endings, let's talk about new beginnings. And Fortnite had a very big week this week in terms of new developments. And if we go over here to this PC Gamer article, Fortnite launched what it's calling Chapter 2. And it was kind of interesting what they did. Basically, you know, Fortnite is one of the most popular video games on the planet. On Twitch, it's one of the most viewed, games on there. And what they did was they actually did like a little event in true Fortnite fashion where they blew up the current map of Fortnite and created a black hole. And you basically just stared at this black hole for about 12, 24 hours. I don't know how long it was. And, you had Twitch streamers just streaming this black hole. It was just like, it was nothing. It was just like a pretty picture, and they had like a little mini game that you could play on it or whatever. But while they were basically kind of, I guess, transferring over to the new Fortnite, they just had this placeholder there that people were watching. And now Fortnite Chapter 2 is live, and it seems to be being received very well. Can you give us a rundown on the differences between what the original Fortnite was versus Chapter 2, and what do you think Epic's strategy is with rolling out this new version of the game and what they're going to be doing going forward?
Well, there's a couple of things. The one thing that I do want to bring up with this before we do that, this was a development. This was fantastic from a development perspective. The way this was handled, it wasn't just the game world. They had an entire event in game where if you were actually playing a game, you saw the world being attacked and blowing up. But even if you were in the menus, they had the menus start to disappear. They started to fly towards the black hole as it appeared. So you saw actually the entire outside part of the UI start to disappear into the black hole. And that, to me, was an amazing amount of development resources for something that for most people it would have been an afterthought, or they wouldn't have even thought of it at all. They would have just shut down the client. Just to be in the menu and actually have all of this happening, I have to give it up to them.
Yeah, like normally a game would have just been servers are down for maintenance, and you wouldn't have been able to log in or see anything until they were back up. But they actually did this in real time, didn't they?
Oh yeah, they did all this in real time. It was 40 hours it was down, and they broke Twitch. they literally, there were so many people watching this that it broke the Twitch website to the point where things weren't loading, things were failing, and I don't know if I've actually heard that before. One of the good things is a lot of the things from season 10 that people absolutely hated.
Like the mech.
Yeah, the mechs are gone. There's a full-on graphical upgrade. One of the coolest things I saw was for a new player after season 2 starts, it has this absolutely gorgeous cutscene that starts, and it as you start up the game, it has this gorgeous cutscene, and rather than it being like, okay, start, look for a game or something like that, it literally has it go from the cutscene to you diving into the game.
Wow.
There's no break at all. You jump out of the cutscene, jumps you out of the bus, and you're falling.
So the big news about Chapter 2, though, is a whole new map. Like they totally redid the map, didn't they?
Oh yeah, but they've been slowly redoing the map every update. Like if you look at season 10 compared to season 1, the map has changed dramatically. So I expected it. This is much bigger than any one season. This is probably about the kind of change you'd see it over maybe 6 of the seasons. If you looked at 4 and you looked at 10, you might see this amount of difference.
But they've added more rivers and water bodies of water to the map. So like you can use boats to traverse the map now. They've changed the loot drops so that I guess things are a little bit better on the edges of the map, and as you get more towards the center of the map, it's a little bit more sparse or something along those lines.
Yeah. Overall, and the graphical upgrade. The graphical upgrade is fantastic.
Yeah, here's a look at the new map. So you can see these bodies of water that are now on here. And
it also looks a lot more forested than it originally was.
Yeah, there's a lot more resources.
Hidden areas. This will be a lot better for the people who like the run and gun, hide, ambush type of scenario too.
Yeah, what's this out here? This island? Can you actually get to that island?
You know, I'm gonna have to look that up. I didn't even notice the island. I thought it was there for aesthetics.
It might be. I have no idea if you can actually go there. But it was funny. I was watching Ninja the other day, and like it was him and his core group that he games with, and they were just running around trying to explore the map and figure out where everything was now because everything's been changed. Different points of interest, no lucrative loot zones, feel isolated. There's all types of interesting points of interest on this map that you basically have to relearn. And they've also kind of redone the loot system too, right? In the sense of what's available, they've kind of simplified it.
Yeah. And
I think this is a. Let me see. Yeah, here we go. So this is the loot pool from Chapter 2.
Yeah.
A little bit easier. They've got assault rifles, SMGs, shotguns, tactical shotguns. They included a healing tool, like a healing bazooka that if you shoot your teammate with it, you can heal them. So there's some healing mechanics in the game now. Bandage bazooka right here. And you can also pick up injured allies and enemies and move them around the map now. So like you can, like if you have a teammate that's downed, you can get them to a safe place to heal them a little bit faster than if they were to crawl there and stuff like that. So it's quite interesting to see what they're including in this new chapter. But what do you think this means for the future of Fortnite? Do you think that how is this going to affect the competitive nature of it? Is it going to make it easier to stream or more interesting to watch on stream? What are your thoughts?
My thoughts are this with how similar most battle royales are, this is almost like them saying we're going to release a sequel to Fortnite. It's enough different that I think that it's going. I mean, if you look at Twitch right now, it was 4th or 5th place for the last couple of weeks, and then this happened. It's back to number 1 everywhere. It is definitely something, and I would say that I'm not a giant fan of Epic, but this is the type of thing you need to do to stay relevant, and especially. If you're following the fad of the week, Fortnite has been the fad of the week for years. And they've done that by constantly changing things up. And I can't think of any other game on the planet that changes things up as rapidly and as often as they do.
Yeah, you mentioned before that the development team for this game is really incredible in the sense that I think they've got they must have 3 or 4 teams just constantly developing different phases of this game. Because they do update like pretty much monthly what goes. I remember when Apex Legends launched, and they had the ping system and a bunch of other resurrection mechanics and stuff like that, and everyone was like, "Oh, this works so well. Fortnite doesn't have this stuff." Within a month, Fortnite incorporated those elements into it, and the turnaround on that was just crazy.
Oh yeah, and it was actually a feature, if I remember correctly, that they said that they didn't think that their code base could handle at one point in the past. So they must have actually the amount of code that they probably had to write to get something to work that was never planned, was not part of any of their systems. If I remember correctly, once you were out, you were pretty much out. Like the idea of actually respawning, I don't think pretty much existed in their game.
Well, one of the benefits that Epic has is it's their own engine that they're using for that. Maybe you could fill us in from your engineering standpoint. Like, what are the advantages that Epic has in terms of using the Epic engine for a game like this?
It's actually probably far less than you'd expect. Mostly because, I mean, look at Anthem or any of the EA games. They also own Frostbite. The team that does Frostbite is a completely different team, and they actually have to reserve time with them. Fortnite is probably the same way.
Well, wasn't
you might bring over somebody who is an expert in it, or you might be able to rush changes a little bit, but it's a completely separate team. The people are working on the engine.
My understanding was that the Frostbite engine that EA and uses for a lot of their games, it was originally developed for a first-person shooter. There wasn't a lot of documentation for it. There wasn't a lot of support for it. So when they wanted to do something new with it, They were kind of hamstring. It was a lot of trial and error. Epic, their engine has been around for a long time. It's very well documented. They have, these teams that are just on top of things because they were licensing it out to other games. So I was just curious if the fact that they're using the Epic engine for Epic's own game, if that kind of gave them some type of advantage in these quick turnarounds.
It gives them a mild advantage in that they probably can push their own teams to move quicker or put their stuff to the top of the queue. But significantly large team could probably almost push Epic just as far. I don't know the internals of Epic. Perhaps they're more tightly wound than I know of most other teams. But from my own development, I've worked at large companies where to get another team to actually work on a ticket, they've got maybe a month or two of turnaround if it's not something that is mission critical or is an outage on our side, because they have their own priorities that have to be done first. If they're working on a new version of Unreal or something like that, you could see someone has a queue of like 30 different tickets they're working on, or 30 different items, or 10 new features for a small team of 4. And they've got to get those done by their own deadlines. So they can't just jump off and fix something else or make an addition to the current version that is not a game-breaking bug or something that is causing an actual monetary loss. Now, saying that, I have a feeling because of how much Apex scared them, considering it surpassed them on Twitch for a little while, and Fortnite is their big cash cow, there's a good chance that they dragged the entire team off for that feature, considering how vocal the community was that was required, specifically the respawn thing.
So how do you think the Chapter 2 update is going to affect the esports landscape for Fortnite?
I think this will put them again for another of a couple of years on top.
Really? Why is that?
Specifically because this reinvigorated the community, and there's a bit of momentum once someone gets as big as, like, World of Warcraft is a great example. Once they got so big, yeah, a lot of people were upset at them for a long period of time, but it took years for the fall off to start. Fortnite, people were getting annoyed at around Season 8. It took a long time for the fall off to start.
So do you think that Chapter 2 has any benefits to the competitive scene?
To the competitive scene, removing the mechs, the amount of people who just, there were professional gamers who would just stop mid-match because of the mechs, because something happened that was random.
And, like that.
Sorry, I have someone riding a flamingo behind me.
Yeah. Well, we talked a little bit about engines and software and stuff. So let's get really nerdy right now. Let's talk about the PlayStation 5. Some specs were just announced for the next generation of this console, and I don't know anything about this stuff. I kind of went cross-eyed reading this, but since you are an engineer and you're hip to this jive, I wanted to get your take on this. It says this is an article from tweaktown.com. And it says PlayStation 5 confirmed to have 8C16T Zen 2 CPU from AMD. What any of that means, I have no idea. But it basically says that we're slowly finding out more info about the new console. We're now seeing Japanese magazine Famitsu reporting that PlayStation 5 does indeed have an 8C16T chip based off of AMD's new Zen 2 architecture. We've been hearing rumors about this for a while now, but it seems the specs have been solidified as developer kits reach game developers. So break this down for me. What the hell does this mean?
Okay, so currently a lot of the things holding PC gaming back is the fact that most consoles are still fairly single-threaded, or at the very least, very mildly threaded applications.
What does that mean, threaded?
Threads. So each processor core, generally with the newer versions, is able to do 2 threads, which means 2 tasks at the same time. So let's say I'm developing an application that needs to run a bunch of processing in the background. I will spawn a bunch of threads, have them handle the processing, and then the main thread, which is the main program, the main application, will handle that after all of the side threads are handled. So there'll be things running simultaneously. Say I need to grab information from this source, this source, this source, this source. Rather than having the main thread do it one at a time, I'll have each one do it individually. And then the main thread will then take over and do whatever I want with that information, display it, run a calculation based off of it. What we're seeing is the previous PS4 Pro was based on an 8-core, I believe 8-thread. So there was no hyper-threading or no SMT, which is the ability to run 2 threads on a singular core.
Okay, so what does this 8C 16T Zen 2 CPU mean for the PlayStation?
So what you're going to see is this will be as powerful as a current gen PC.
And why is that important?
Why is that important? Because generally most consoles at the same amount of processing power will be able to deliver far greater graphics than a PC. Only because of one thing. The software is developed very specifically for that exact hardware set. If you look at most PCs at this point, the one sitting next to me is an 8-core, 16-thread with a 5700 XT. That's similar to what we're going to see out of the PS4. PS5.
The PS5?
Yeah. The PS4 Pro, which can do 4K graphics on a television, is only based off of a 2.1 gigahertz 8-core with an old AMD Radeon as the GPU.
Okay. So what does this mean for PlayStation 5 in terms of like how good is it going to be compared to, like, I don't know, your standard PC in terms of gaming?
You're going to see this probably eclipse. Well, your standard anymore is around a 1060 with maybe a 6-core, 6-thread CPU. You're going to see it raise the requirements of PC gaming a lot. Well, not requirements. You're going to see it raise the recommended specs.
Raise the standards?
Yeah, you're going to see it raise the standards. Minimum specs probably going to stay fairly similar. But you're going to see companies invest far more in the high-end development cycles, which is great because right now with the state of PS4, the state of Xbox, you're seeing a lot of people, a lot of companies who are looking at their recommended specs as being similar to those. This is probably, just based off of a glance, I would say maybe 4 times as powerful as a PS4 Pro.
So what does that mean in terms of the quality of games we can expect from this?
You're gonna see a lot of, so you're gonna see a lot of games look more similar to their cutscenes. You're gonna see a lot of games that can use advanced features. Ray tracing is something that you're gonna start to see, which is actual light reflection. Ray tracing, the entire idea is that every single light source will actually trace a path across everything. So water will have its own reflective properties, and the light sources will properly reflect off the water rather than it being a trick based off of a light source under the water that seems to match the direction you're going. A good example, the best example of ray tracing I can think of right now is Minecraft ray tracing. You have a game that is, to be honest, kind of old, kind of not very graphically intense, just turns absolutely beautiful with ray tracing, because you're seeing actual lighting sources. Here you go. I just put that one in for you if you want to. It's a great example of it.
Let me see if I can call it up here.
And I'm certain you've seen Minecraft before.
Oh yeah, I've seen Minecraft. I've even seen pictures of like the ray tracing version of Minecraft.
Yeah.
Let's see if we can get over here. So I'll go ahead and
just. And this is Minecraft.
That looks amazing. Like the shadows and stuff. It really makes it look like a 3D.
Yeah.
Because like the original Minecraft it's very blocky. It's almost 8-bit looking. Look at the water there.
You can still see the 8-bit looking pieces, but just the inclusion of actual realistic lighting does that much for you. The other thing you'll start to see, because of the higher throughput on the processor, the higher throughput on the memory, is you're going to start to see the things that a lot of people don't notice are missing on consoles, which is if you look at a lot of games, a lot of the debris in the field is gone. A lot of the little side pieces that most people don't notice until they actually play a game on a PC is missing. So you're going to see that. But I think the big thing is you're going to start to see games try to push the envelope again. Every generation does this, and every single generation that of a process of a console will increase the high end of the PC as well.
So basically, these specs for PlayStation 5, they're pretty good.
Yes.
Now, what does this mean for competitors like Xbox? Are they going to have to step up their game? Like, I know that they've already kind of solidified their Xbox Red, I think it's called, their next generation. How are they going to compare?
So Xbox is a weird case. They're coming out with 2 consoles. They're coming out. I can't remember what the first one is. The high end is called Scarlet.
Yeah, that was it, Scarlet.
But they're using very similar specs for their secondary console to this. Their high end, I am just taking a guess. We're looking at like $900 to $1,200 is going to be slightly higher end than this. That's just a guess, though, just because. Sorry, she just got her costume in and wanted to take.
Wanted to show it off.
Yeah. But no, I like that. The other thing is, the Xbox is supposedly actually targeting the next generation of display units as well, which is a big thing.
Like the 4K TVs?
No, 8K.
8K.
They're probably targeting 8K 30 frames. I'm not exactly positive they'll be able to hit it. But that means that you're going to start seeing displays that reach that type of resolution. You're going to start. I mean, they exist now. You're talking about like the 10 grand displays, just like the 4K displays a couple years ago were sitting there around the same price. You might see those start. The companies start to try to bring the prices down on things like that in order to actually sell it to people who would use it. That's the reason I include this one, is because anytime a single thing actually advances, you start to see a ripple effect throughout technology.
Yeah, because people got to, keep up with it.
Yep, and because more people are involved with it, suddenly people are trying to drop the cost to make it mass producible so that they can actually make the money from the most people possible.
All right, so we talked about the hardware. Let's talk a little bit more about software right now. There is a growing trend here, and it's funny because if you look at the movie business, the movie and TV business, there's this thing going on right now that I'm calling the streaming wars, where every big studio in Hollywood is kind of creating their own direct-to-consumer streaming service to compete with Netflix and stuff like that. And so basically, consumers now have a large variety of services with which to subscribe to in order to get content from. And it looks like video games are kind of following in that same subscription service model. If we look at this article from IGN, it actually breaks down all the major video game subscription services. So we have Apple Arcade, which is basically, it's going to be like $5 a month, and it gets you access to all of the games on Apple. PlayStation Now, it's a little bit more expensive at $20 a month or $100 a year. Then you have Xbox Game Pass, which is about $15 a month or some yearly thing. And then you got EA Access and Origin Access, which is owned by EA as well, but it's for the PC as opposed to the EA Access, which is for the consoles, I guess. And then you have Uplay from Ubisoft. So basically, you have a lot of different choices with which to subscribe to for games. And this seems to be the model that the video game industry is going towards, whereas instead of buying individual games, you subscribe to a service and you get these games as part of the service, basically Netflix for games. What do you think of this trend?
So I have two thoughts. The one thing is, I absolutely love this trend as an older gamer.
Why is that?
Mostly, I want to play games. I want to play a variety of games. I don't have the time to sit down and finish every single game that I want to play. Some of them, I'll play for a week. I'll play for 2 or 3 days. I'll play just to try it out, or just to play a singular mode of it, or something like that. I have Xbox Game Pass. I've had Uplay. I've had Origin. I've had. I actually had Viveport for my VR, and I'll sit down and play a different game every night, and don't have to worry about it. I don't come back to games too often. I don't have time for the long-term games anymore. I don't have time to play 200 hours of Final Fantasy VII and beat the Emerald Weapon and get every single thing, and still play the other games that I actually want to play.
And if you think about it, it's usually $60 for a AAA title. And with one of these, it's like, okay, maybe you're paying $20 a month, but you're getting access to that AAA title as part of your subscription, right?
Yeah. And I mean, there's a lot of people who this won't work for. The people who will play a single game for a year and a half. The people who only want to sit down and play Minecraft, which costs them $30, but they'll play for 2 years. But for someone like me, I absolutely love it, and I especially like that a lot of the DLC is included as well. Uplay, I think, includes all the DLC, though there's another issue with that, is the fact that they've ruined save files for a couple of games if you had anything DLC related on the user.
So, as a fan of this model, let me ask you, which of these that this article lists do you think is the best value?
I got to be honest, it's the Xbox Game Pass by far. There's 160 some games. They add, I think this month they added like 9, maybe. They've been good about adding somewhere around that many every single month. And if you actually have an Xbox as well, the $14.99 a month for both is an insane value.
So basically, with the Xbox Game Pass, you not only get the games for your Xbox, but you get them for your PC as well, right?
Yep. And I think you get a little bit more for Xbox. Also, the good thing about the Game Pass is that a lot of the ones that are exclusive to one platform, like anything that wants to be on Xbox, I believe that's also on PC has to be on the Xbox Game Pass. That's how they got around the exclusivity for Outer Worlds. That's how they got through the exclusivity from Epic for Metro Exodus. So it's definitely a good value.
So Xbox Game Pass is the winner of all these, in your opinion. It looks like Apple Arcade is a lot more casual, kind of mobile games.
Yeah,
if I'm right.
But it's also Mac OS.
Yeah. The PlayStation stuff, you know, they were kind of the first to do the subscription model. The ones that don't really appeal to me are the EA Access and the Origin Access, simply because I've dealt with EA before, and I don't like them. They have like these weird, just this weird business model, especially like, for instance, Anthem. When Anthem first came out, EA Origin, or what's it called? EA Access. The people who had EA Access got like a what do you call it? They got early access to Anthem if they were on EA Access, and the model that they used for that was just extremely like weird. Yeah, like it was so complicated. Like they put out this infographic of like who could access what when, and you were just like, I need a flow chart to understand what my EA Access gets me. So I'm not too big on EA or Origin. Basically, Origin's the same thing as EA Access, except it's for the PC. And as we all know, EA is one of the worst companies in the world.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't want to support them with this endeavor.
No, and even their EA Access, it's like, okay, it's the $4.99 a one you get a list of games, and then they have a $14.99 or like $15.99, I think.
I think it's $29.99 per year.
No, they have a different version of it. It's EA Access. Oh, sorry,
Origin Access Premier.
Yeah, which is there's a different set, and I think some of them you actually have to pay for DLC on that one as well.
Yeah.
And it's such a weird service that I can't actually ever recommend Origin Access. I just can't do it. Uplay, I can see. Uplay actually has a very large older library as well. But again, I've had my own issues with it, where your characters, if you own the base game and then you have it and then you play any DLC with it, you can actually lose access to your save file the moment your subscription lapses.
Yeah. So of the group, it seems like Xbox Game Pass is the winner that people should be looking at.
Yeah, and it's really weird for me as an old school geek to actually say that Microsoft seems to be the best at a lot of things anymore.
I know, right?
Sorry, this is a geeky tangent. They're actually one of the open source kings anymore. Everything they do anymore is open source.
It's crazy. Taking a new direction. All right. So speaking of like software subscription services or software shops, let's talk about Valve. So Valve, as we know, is the owner and operator of Steam, which is one of the biggest digital marketplaces for games. And they just lost a very important court case over in Europe. And we have this article from Digital Trends where it says French court case against Valve may have serious implication for game sales. And this was kind of an interesting article because basically a French consumer organization or consumer rights organization took Valve to court. And it was a French court. And basically their case focused on the fact that consumers cannot resell a game once they have purchased a digital copy of it, unlike buying a physical copy. And basically, a high court in Paris has agreed with the consumer rights group, and Valve will have to change their policies. And basically, the argument was that when a consumer purchases a game, they are purchasing a license to use that software. This is just like the license you get to watch a movie when you buy a Blu-ray disc. If you're done with a Blu-ray that you bought, you no longer want to watch that movie, you can lend it to a friend or sell it secondhand. So digital purchases ought to work the same way. If a customer doesn't enjoy a game, they should be able to return it. And if they are done playing it, they should be able to resell it. And Valve argued that it does not sell licenses for games, rather it sells subscriptions. When you purchase a game through Steam, you are buying the rights to access that game indefinitely. However, you are not actually purchasing a license for the game. Therefore, traditional consumer protections such as the right to return or resell do not apply. And the French court ruled against Valve on that argument and said that Valve needs to change its policies or it will have to pay a fine of 3,000 euros per day for up to 6 months if Valve does not comply. And Valve, it says here, plans to appeal on the ruling. Of course they are. But what impact would something like this have on the gaming industry, do you think, if more companies are taken to court over this?
This is a little bit of a terrifying court case. Mostly because, okay, just think about this. You beat a game, sell it the next day. Game prices almost overnight for every single game in the planet tank. How many games that are absolutely fantastic sell for $10, last only maybe 10 hours? The same day a game goes on sale, its price suddenly becomes like $2.99, $1.99.
Because people are turning around and basically just reselling it.
Yeah, it's game sales become rentals, and this is not only terrifying for games. You have to think of what they're saying here. Voodoo, Apple Music, Spotify, every single thing on the planet that sells digital content, this suddenly applies to.
But wouldn't you say that, so like they're advocating that you actually have ownership over these digital things that you buy online and that you can lend them out or sell them just like you could a physical copy? Because, I mean, if you think about it, the market for DVDs hasn't tanked due to reselling. So why would that apply to software?
Because the market for DVDs has aging, has breakage, has everything like that, has anything that actually happens with a physical item. The value of a couple of bits does not change at all by buying a used copy. Nobody on the planet would buy a new copy if the used market suddenly existed for it, because you're literally buying the exact same item. No usage, none of it really matters. The thing that terrifies me about this is, do you know what this means? Is that suddenly DLC, suddenly loot boxes, pay to win, pay codes that come with games that you have to redeem in order to have certain features, locked off features. Suddenly that becomes the way the companies are going to start making money.
Well, that's already the way that they're making money, though.
Except you will see it start to go to the extreme. And like I said, think about the other companies. This overturned the ruling that at the very least, in my opinion, they still have to go argue the fact that it's art. But if this stays, everything from Spotify to Apple Music to Voodoo to name any other place that you can buy or sell digital content suddenly gains the ability to resell it, which means that none of the artists actually get any money for anything beyond that first sale. And I mean, you're going to see waves of DRM get more extreme. So,
it seems like this is par for the course for Europe. They seem to like passing laws that just wreak havoc on digital stuff.
yeah.
Like their anti-meme law, I think it was called Article 13 or something like that. They just seem to have it out for the digital world, don't they?
Yeah. And the thing that scares me is the amount of always on DRM is going to get worse with this. Think about it. Someone keeps all of his games on a secondary computer, sells the game on his first computer, still has the game on his second computer, can keep it as long as he wants. So, of course, the companies are going to start putting in always online DRM or callback functions on every single game that's on every single computer.
Yeah,
To make sure
and that having to be online in order to play a game, that's so annoying.
Yeah, and I mean, it was getting really bad for a little while. A couple of companies have actually pushed back against it. You're seeing some games that don't require always online for at least a single player portion. But you're going to see that start to disappear if this is the case. If the only way to verify that, because otherwise you'll have people selling a copy and then the other person selling a copy, everybody will have a secondary copy of the game. Maybe even they'll grab a laptop that can't even play games as they're selling.
So like for our guild, for instance, we could get Mr. Moneybags Leonidas to buy a game and then resell it to us for like $1. And we each buy it off of him, and just everyone keeps the old version of the game on their things as they resell it.
Yep. And those are the types of technological hurdles that they're not thinking of. And I'm terrified of what the game companies are actually going to do in order to recoup the money that they're about to lose, just because they'll want to, at the very least, if they have to comply with this law, they'll want to find a way to make sure that everybody else is complying with it and not keeping a copy of the digital goods. I also don't like the idea of suddenly Valve setting up a requirement to have a forensic examination of my computer when I sell a game, or check every IP that is logged into that game. The idea of that kind of privacy invasion that might end up happening could be a result of this. These are the types of things I think of when I think of anything digital. You got to think of the consequences, how every single party will react, how all the other companies that are affected because their products are similar are going to react.
So do you think that's why we're seeing a bigger emphasis on these subscription services for games, where you pay a monthly fee and you get access to a bunch of games?
Yep. And that's also why I have a couple games over there that to get access to the full game, I have to put in a secondary code that's a one use only.
What do you mean by that?
I had a couple of PS4 games where a feature was locked down behind a code you had to put in. I think For Honor was one of them. What was the other one? I think Red Dead Redemption had a feature that was a GTA Online also. GTA 5, to use the online portion, you had to input a code that was a one-time use to actually get on multiplayer. It was like a multiplayer code.
And so like once you use that code, you couldn't access that feature again?
No, once you use that code, if you resold the game, the next person in line couldn't get online, couldn't do online play without that code. So they would have to buy a fresh retail copy in order to get that feature. And I have a feeling you're going to start to see games locking down features behind one-time use codes that come with the game. Now, as someone who buys games fresh, a lot of times it's not a giant deal to me, but I don't like the idea of the game industry going down that route of, oh, you need this DLC, because I don't like where that ends. Where that becomes the norm, and suddenly selling that DLC is the norm.
Well, let's talk about games and DLC for a minute, because one of the big kind of weird success / failure stories of the past year or so has been Destiny. And Destiny, it's a game, it's a looter shooter game that I never really got into all that much. I know you've played it. It's kind of like a light MMO light type thing, and they had a lot of problems with their launch back when they were under Activision Blizzard, which is going through their own troubles right now. But recently, basically, the developer of Destiny 2, Bungie Studios, was able to secure their independence from Activision, which used to own them. And they basically were able to take the Destiny IP with them when they left. And now they're basically the masters of their own destiny. And because of that, they've decided to make Destiny 2 free to play. And basically the core game, both with the original Destiny and Destiny 2, were not very good. And then their DLCs came out, and it kind of made them better. From what I hear now, Destiny 2 is actually pretty good. Maybe you can fill us in on what's going on with the free-to-play version. What's the future of this game? Is it worth checking out? What do you think is going to happen here?
So Destiny 2, the new light version, it's actually a fantastic game. I'm just going to say it right out there first. It's a great shooter that has a ridiculous amount of story content that comes in for free. You get you get Destiny 2, you get the first 3 expansions for free. Now, there are problems with it, most of which is actually trying to find your way around. Because there's not a lot of guide maps for the new player coming in. But what they ended up doing was they ended up switching over to a seasonal type of gameplay, like a lot of the competitive games, where a lot of the things, items to get, everything like that, will be locked behind season passes and things. So actually a good comparison would be Dauntless, the new Monster Hunter clone. And you're getting pretty much at this point almost say 3 years worth of content for free just to start playing of a AAA shooter.
Yeah, so here it says, New Light is Bungie's attempt at a free-to-play game for Xbox One, PlayStation 4, PC via Steam, and Google Stadia. You can play substantial portions of the game's content without paying a single penny, but not everything is included in the deal. All Destiny 2 players will be automatically converted to the free version of New Light when it launches, and they will keep all their purchases and elements such as expansions. A generous part of Destiny 2 is available with the free version. You get access to all of Destiny 2's Year 1 content, which includes 2 complete expansions, Curse of Osiris and Warmind, with no-cut content and all stories and quests. You can also explore all planetary locations, including newer ones such as Tangled Shore and Dreaming City from the Forsaken expansion. Players will also have access to the Gambit matchmaking mode, as well as 3 raids, all strikes, and competitive multiplayer mode, the Crucible. Now, I know one of the big criticisms of Destiny 2 was the microtransaction model that they played. There's a lot of kind of controversy surrounding the fact that they would kind of throttle leveling, characters to keep people from leveling too quickly in order to get them frustrated and wanting to pay for microtransactions and stuff like that. Now that Bungie's out of Activision, out from under Activision's boot, has the microtransaction stuff been scaled back?
Well, I actually think the amount of microtransactions is a little higher, but from what I've seen so far, it's all cosmetic. There is an absolutely stupid amount of cosmetic microtransactions, which they're fine for some people. I'm not that much into cosmetics enough to actually pay for them. Sometimes I'll grab one just to give a little bit to the dev if I think it's worth it. But I don't see much pay to win in it. From what I'm seeing, yeah, you'll have some good items locked behind the. You'll have some good items locked behind the expansions and the seasons, but you expect to pay for expansions every time a mass amount of new content. At least that's how the games used to be. When you had a mass amount of new content, you would buy an expansion. It wouldn't be something where items were locked behind it. The entire content would be locked behind it.
So, would you recommend people give New Light a try?
I would definitely recommend it. You can hit max light. You can get access to a good majority of the competitive weapons, competitive items, without ever paying a cent. And especially if you like the idea of the PvP or their kind of PvE VP setup they have going on. It's in the Crucible is what you were talking about, which is you fight monsters, then you go to the enemy side and help the monsters, and then you have to kill the monsters they send over to you. So,
well, it certainly sounds like it's a pretty fully featured free-to-play game. What do you think is going to be the future of this franchise now that Bungie's kind of in control of it?
I'm seeing it go places. It looks like they actually have a very good idea of where they're going with it. From what I've heard, they have a 5 to 10 year roadmap of where to go from here.
Well, didn't they say that when they first launched the original Destiny, that they had like a 5 or 10 year plan that apparently a lot of people thought was awful compared to the first couple years?
Yeah, but the thing is, if I remember correctly, that was when they started to get pulled into Activision's orbit, is when things started to go downhill. I played the original Destiny. First 6 months, I believe, were pretty bad, and then I remember it getting really, really good until around the time they were starting to announce Destiny 2, and that's when they got kind of pulled under Activision's thumb.
Well, they were under Activision's thumb from the beginning, weren't they?
That's they might have been owned by Activision, but that's when Activision started taking an active role in how they handled things. Because that's when they started getting pulled into the Blizzard launcher. That's when they were actually considered developing under the Activision name rather than under the Bungie name. Because you remember, Bungie did a bunch of the Halo games.
Yeah.
So they had a lot of clout in the industry at the time.
They did all the original, the good Halo games.
Yeah, so they had a lot of pull. They could throw their weight around a little bit. So at least in my opinion, it took a little while for Activision to be able to say, "Hey, you're doing this," rather than, "Hey, would like you to do this."
So, what do you think are the prospects for Destiny 3? When is that going to be hitting? Do you think, how different is it going to be from what we've seen in the past? Do you think that it's going to be an evolution or a step back? A lot of people argue that Destiny 2 was a step back.
Yeah, Destiny 2 was definitely at the start a step back. I believe by the end, I'd say by Curse of Osiris, they had actually passed the original Destiny in terms of what I liked about it. So that was the second expansion. Though I have to admit, I did love the Red War. That was the story was great. Bungie still just kills it in terms of story, and their voice acting is over the top good. Nathan Fillion.
Gotta love Nathan Fillion.
Oh yeah. But I don't see a new expansion coming. A new Destiny coming for at least 3 to 4 years, if they even do that, because they might take Destiny 2 down the WoW way, which is continually upgrading it, possibly doing even a visual or a full overhaul in the background, but keeping the same game.
You don't think that they might just try to do a reboot with a Destiny 3 and kind of get rid of all the Activision holdover demands and do exactly what they've always wanted to do since the beginning?
It's possible, but all their public statements lead me to believe that they're kind of dedicated to continuing with Destiny 2. Also, of course, any new full game is a fairly massive undertaking. So, and I don't see it happening for a couple of years. But then again, they 3 or 4 years down the line, it could be like, okay, our engine's hit its limits.
That's true. The technology, especially for the next generation of consoles, they might have something in mind for that as well. Okay, well, I think we covered everything that I wanted to cover on today's live stream. James, thank you so much for coming online and talking about video game news. Why don't you tell people where they can find out more about you?
I don't really stream that often, but I've been starting to. Twitch.tv. Hold on, I actually have to look up my /Lugards, Lugards.
Right on. And what type of games do you stream when you're on there?
I've been doing Paladins a little bit. I do some VR with body weights on, which is kind of me being a fitness geek as well. But
that makes one of us.
Mostly whatever I feel like playing at any given time. I have no giant preferences. I've been playing pretty much every type of game for as long as I can remember.
All right. Well, everyone, thank you all for tuning in to this edition of Grodd's Gamers for the Legion of Doom. Thank you to my special guest, James Houston. And as always, this is Matthew Kadish, and I will catch you guys in the next live stream. See you later.